And we're live. Am I echoing? Good morning, good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is Conversations That Create Change, brought to you by BooGio 11 Productions. And I'm beyond thrilled to be joined by my co-host today, Mudita Chandra, who is not just an expert in antiques and luxury goods and really beautiful things and experiences. And if you know her from her work with animals, where she's been rescuing and rehabilitating dogs for the last 20 years, abandoned and injured street dogs here in India. But she is also our co-founder of the Women of India Summit, and she is a producer of events, of plays. The list is very long. The reason why she's on this call with me is because she's our in-house relationship coach, who all our members go to when they have problems with their relationship, because Mudita has a psychology background. Mudita, say hello to our viewers.
Huh?
And we're thrilled to have join us Diana Zaheer from Colorado, who, if you read her resume of all the things she's done, all the various modalities she's a master in, and all the amazing teachers and masters she's studied under, she's Diana is a very unusual combination of teacher, healer, and incredible guide. And the reason why Mudita and I was so thrilled to have her on board is she has a very unique perspective because she's American, but she's lived in the Middle East, she's lived in India, where she still maintains a home and has a very large following of students and clients who will follow her to the ends of the earth. But the reason why we particularly adore Diana and love working with her, and this here comes my Hogwarts analogy, which I always threatened all of you that I would make. If there was a Hogwarts, which there is somewhere, and there was a teacher who made spells, it would be Diana. In all my years as an actor, director, project alchemist, founder of Women of India Summit, I've been privileged to work with some incredibly gifted, creative people as well as people who are experts in their field. I've yet to encounter anyone who can heal just by a few words. I have not met anyone who can say 3 lines and put you under a spell and take away your pain, the discomfort that you're in. And I've seen her work with people of all ages, age groups from all parts of the world. I have never met anyone who is like a glass of warm milk or a cuddle. I always tell Mudita that Diana is like, if I have to describe her, she's a glass of hot chocolate with almond milk and raw sugar. So she's healthy, she's lovely, she's warm, comfort, and very comforting. And I'm so thrilled to have her join us on our 4th episode. And we're talking about the word that no one wants to talk about, which is we. So Mudita, you're going to explain which we word we're talking about today.
I don't think enough good things can be said about Diana. The mysterious V word that we are speaking about today is vulnerability. And I've actually found that I've met so many people, and in Delhi in particular, in the circles that we run, I see it in glimpses in other areas of my life as well, but primarily in like our social circles, I see how people find vulnerability very uncomfortable. And I'm very curious to speak more about it. I'm sure all of us have varying insights into why people feel uncomfortable with vulnerability. But Diana, I'm very curious to hear what you see there.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. What beautiful introductions. I'm just soaking that all up. That felt really nice.
Very easy.
Welcome to everybody who's joining us and may join us later. Very, very glad you're here. And my warmest wishes to both Divya and MC and their family and all of the beloved families in India and overseas. I have a very special place in my heart for India. So let's see, vulnerability. Well, this is one of my favorite words. I think that what we think vulnerability is in our minds and what it actually is when we have a quiet and personal relationship to it inside ourselves are very different things. The word is often associated with what has happened to us in our childhoods, where either it wasn't okay to be vulnerable or we felt a lot of pressure to be vulnerable. but these were external concepts which were offered to us. And if you know me at all, you know that I love all humans. I haven't met one yet I don't love. So when we're talking about what's happened to us with our families, I am approaching that from a place of true compassion and true appreciation for all the love that's come down to each one of us from the generations before us and from our parents. Even if there was a lot of pain or a lot of confusion or a lot of distortion, there's always a lot of love. And I think that's part of what happens with vulnerability, is we get confused with all these things swimming in the same soup pot. If we look at today and then we take a step back from the history for a moment, what it feels like to be vulnerable in this moment is really always our first question. And it's a private question. What it feels like between you and you in this moment. Very often, if we don't have any tools to do this, what happens when we go inside ourselves is encounter a lot of critical voice. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of shoulds. We are very unkind to ourselves, and we don't even know it because we've been doing that for a very long time. So something like vulnerability is a way we get to do something new. So I asked my two lovelies here before we began if I could do something a little unconventional, because I love to work in an unconventional way. And I'd like to invite everybody to take a moment and maybe have an experience of your own vulnerability. You're all alone, it's private, it's safe. It's a somatic experience, it's a body experience, and you don't ever have to tell anybody about it. So for maybe 5 seconds here, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. I'm going to invite you to see if you can feel what it feels like to have your body in the chair or on the bed, wherever you are. Feel how that furniture is touching your body. Notice your breath for a moment. Notice places where your breath might be moving. Maybe places where it's not. Notice any sounds in the room. Notice temperature. Might feel like you soften a little bit, or you arrive more fully in your own skin. Might feel like you get a little bit heavier. Things drop down, they slow down. This is the kind of inquiry that we can do that is vulnerable. And it doesn't involve anybody else. When you're ready, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes again. I'd love to take us on a much longer journey into ourselves. But that's a beginning where I get to know myself as space or quiet or, wow, I just felt my body in the chair. That's a kind of intimacy with vulnerability. And from there, we get to learn things about ourselves, like what I want, what I need, what I wish I could say to that other person that maybe I'm not ready to say yet. We develop an inner harbor, an inner sanctuary. That's a very long answer to your question, but that's what happens with me. I get going.
But it's also such a loaded subject. Like in what context in school, college, or any other kind of education other than the arts, where are you taught to make a connection with your vulnerability? I mean, since we're children, we're taught to protect ourselves, to put the right face on in public, whether it's when you're in family circles, whether you go to a party, whether you go to school. You're not told to bring your vulnerable, honest self. And part of the work, my background is in theater, and I think part of what the whole training with when you do rehearsals or theater is to remove the mask, to get as vulnerable and naked as possible. But that's within a context. It's when you're on stage or in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
No one applauds you for being vulnerable. Even us doing this on Facebook Live, over 4,000 people with whoever's watching, it's going to be like, what are these weirdos up to? Like closing their eyes and feeling themselves in the body in a chair. But the truth is that all of us are seeking vulnerability. I mean, imagine a night out with your girlfriends or your male friends, or sitting with your puppy. That's vulnerable, right? That's connection.
Of course. Everyone feels vulnerable all the time, but they may not be connected with that feeling.
Mm.
Everyone is
Yeah.
always doing the best that they can based on what they understand about themselves in the moment and what tools they have. And it might be terrifying for people to imagine being vulnerable the way you just described if they're not an actor, right? Or they don't have uh, some environment where it's encouraged. But I think, again, I always like to come back to the fact that what we've learned from our families, whether it's expectations or this is how you do it or the schools or all of that, it would be wonderful to have a revelation here and start teaching this early. And that's why I do what I do. But everyone is operating with what they learned from the people before them. And those people learned from the people before them. And they really are trying to give us the best that they know. Maya Angelou loved to say, if we knew better, we'd do better. So this is what we got, and this is what we're offering, and it may not be what we could offer the world and the next generations, but it was actually full of a lot of love. So becoming more vulnerable, learning about our vulnerability is really learning how to melt. But it doesn't feel safe to melt in public or at a deli party or traveling to a new country. But we can learn to do that inside ourselves. No one will know. What I'm feeling inside, other people can't see. But we don't know that from our childhoods because we felt so exposed or we felt like we had to be a certain way. The truth is, what you're feeling in your private sanctuary is only your business, and no one else knows what's going on.
Dana, what's a common? You work with so many people around the world, and I know you have clients in very different political situations in terms of women's empowerment, safety, all of that. You work in so many different places. Where are the most common places that you see a disconnect with vulnerability happen? Common areas in life, and how does it show up? Is it in the field of mental health? Is it in underachieving? Is it in relationship troubles? Where have you seen encountered it most?
Mm-hmm.
A disconnection with vulnerability, or an uncomfort, a discomfort with vulnerability.
Sure, sure. I think all of those areas have this in common. But I would say right now, what I'm seeing is a lot of relationships wanting to heal and get new tools. That involves a lot of vulnerability because we come together in our relationships for a variety of reasons, and that may have worked for us for a long time. But I think there is an awakening process on the planet right now showing up in people's lives in a lot of different ways, but especially in relationship. So if you have a partner, maybe you have a child, you have businesses together, and then you realize, oh, we got to learn to do something new together here. Vulnerability is going to be a part of that. And that involves tools. This is something I love because I've been married for 20 years and married to an Indian man. So we've got the cross-cultural piece as well. Learning to know who you are inside, what you want, and feeling comfortable with that first by yourself, where you're not giving yourself a hard time for, this is what I want, this is what I need. Then being able to look outside of yourself to your partner and seeing, okay, what's going on with them right now? What's happening in their lives? And furthermore, what are they doing with themselves? Do they have any tools of their own? Or are they kind of in their critical voice? And learning to be able to have a conversation where you can self-represent, not to cause any harm to your partner or to attack them, but to actually be able to report, oh, here's what's going on for me right now. Are you available to hear that? And I'd love to hear what's going on for you right now. Are you open to sharing that with me? for people to learn how to do that, it's a radical thing for their own lives and for their relationships. But it involves first learning to have that relationship with the self, and a huge area, which is learning to say no. We're very afraid to say no to the people we love. That's part of being vulnerable. Being vulnerable doesn't mean I'm open, you can step all over me, I'm Mother Teresa. We have very loving hearts. It's a part of our true nature. It's a part of what's in here every day. But I have to be able to be honest and say, oh gosh, I can't do that right now. Or I'm not available for that right now. Learning how to say no is part of being vulnerable. Just like learning to say yes. But usually people have to learn to say no first, because our families, with their own understanding, often needed us not to be people who could say no.
Yes, in Indian families in particular, I mean, it's not even a question. It's just it's a given that you don't. There is no, depending on the hierarchy, depending on who came first, who has more perceived power. There is no notion of saying no. But even
But again, can I just insert real quick? Part of, again, what we do with our concepts, like we started saying vulnerability is a concept.
Right.
Saying no is often a concept, because when we really drop into my well-being, my inner harbor, and I feel a no, I'm not pushing anything else away. I'm full of love and I feel no. So, I mean, I've practiced this for a long time now, but I can say to my husband or my children or my beloved mother-in-law, I can say, I love you, and I can't do that right now. Both are there together. It doesn't mean if I say no, I'm closing my heart. I say no to people all day long, and they walk away feeling very loved. That's an integration of our nature. We are very loving, and we know what our limits are, what's healthy for us. I could do this, but I can't do that. I could do that tomorrow. I can't do that today. And my heart is so warm towards you.
I think it's going to take us a while to get to where you are. But first,
we can all practice together. Yeah, we're practicing.
We're practicing. I know Em has
but also I find that, you know, in especially our culture, if you were to say no, you're usually given the term of being selfish or self-absorbed, or you know, you think too much of yourself if you have sort of certain standards.
Right.
That's kind of the programming or the culture we've, you know, grown up in.
Right, because we can feel that reaction to the fact that we didn't have a voice. So again, if we look at the concept and we look at the experience, right? I can say no to someone without having a big reaction all over them and say, no, I can't do that. I can actually let them know in a positive way what the no is, right? Like, maybe there's a dinner party. Maybe I'm helping set up in the family home. Maybe they need my help. So I may realize I have a half an hour of time available where I can help, and they want me for an hour. So I can present it as, no, I can't help you for this much time, and then everybody's feathers will get ruffled. Or I can go in and say, you know what, I really want to help with this, and I have a half an hour that I could help with this. How would that be for you? So the person feels seen, they feel heard, they know I'm available, but I've set a boundary there too. I've said, I can't do the whole thing. I can do part of it, but I'm not coming in fighting. And sometimes we feel like we want to come in fighting. That's my business to be within me first. I may have a reaction, I may fight. It happens all the time. And then I learn from that. But I can see if I come in with my clarity about what I can and can't do, I can do it in a very warm-hearted way, and I am still saying no. But I don't have to do a power over the person to establish my no.
That's very interesting space. Before we get to our next question, we are not on Facebook. We're on another software. So wherever we've got viewers from everywhere, just say hi and tell us where you're from. And if you have a question We're going to take them in 5 or 7 minutes from Diana, so feel free to ask her whatever you like. It's very precious to be able to get her while she's traveling. In the meantime, Em, do you have another question? I know you had something that you wanted to ask Diana.
I'm very curious. We discussed boundaries and vulnerability. They kind of go hand in hand, to me, from what I understand. I'm also very curious that what does it mean to be vulnerable and empowered at the same time?
Right. So I think this brings up another topic, which is one of my favorites to talk about, which is merging, right? And that's a whole nother topic we could talk about in more depth. We don't realize how much we get into other people's business. And sometimes doing that can feel really fun because everybody wants to come in the same space and it's yummy and melty. You're having time with your beloved friends or you're doing something together and there's just this feeling of everybody's all snug together and it's super fun. Right? So I would call that positive merging. Or if you like to look at it from a psychological standpoint, that would be the symbiotic phase when you have an infant and the mother and they're just in this delicious oneness. The baby doesn't even know there is a mother yet. There's just this sense of one and it's cozy and it's warm and all of the needs are being met for the baby. But as the child gets older, all those minor and subtle changes, it notices, whoa, there's something here. It's my finger. That's a phenomenal event for a baby in the symbiotic phase. Or if they look and they see there's something over there and they start to realize I have a mother and she's separate than me, right? So this is like the pure beginning of our ability to merge. But when we're adults and we're functioning in our lives, whether we're at home or at work or with friends, we don't realize until we begin to look how much we're coming together with other people. And so we can start to pay attention where we feel that kind of oneness or we feel some separateness, we feel the closeness, we feel the individuation. When we start working with that territory, what we start to realize is I'm over here on my side of the street, and there's some things going on for me. And again, we start in our home base, our inner sanctuary. It's private. Nobody knows. Even if I'm in the room with them doing this, nobody knows, right? Feeling a feeling, having a thought, having a need, having a want. And then there's someone else over there. I don't even really know what's going on with them. I may have a lot of empathy. I may be intuitive. But until they actually choose to reveal to me what's going on in their inner harbor, I don't know. But part of what gets mixed in here, if we're talking about vulnerability and boundaries, is this unconscious merging. I don't even know I'm doing it. I'm having a reaction to something that's not even mine. So this can be a fun little exercise, actually. It can be kind of an inquiry where we're with someone and maybe it starts getting a little bit uncomfortable. We can stop. We can feel ourselves in the chair. We can put our hand on our heart. We can just say, wow, where am I right now? Where did I go? Do I have a feeling right now that I can't even remember? Do I need something to drink? Do I need to take a walk? When we start going back to who am I, what's happening for me, then things like vulnerability and boundaries become more practical and more achievable. If I'm over in that person's business without even realizing I got over there, it's very hard to feel vulnerable because it feels dangerous. I'm kind of in their territory. And it's very hard to have a boundary because I might feel like to get that boundary, I have to push them away. And then they might feel rejected. So again, it's like a dance, something we can practice. When we start feeling this shift in the merging, like, ooh, I want to merge right now. This is fun. I'm really enjoying it. Or, I don't even know where I am. I kind of want to find myself. Those moments of questions will feel more vertical in our energy. We might even feel our spine is a little more straight. We just feel like we're here differently. Like energy is moving up and down in our bodies. When we're really merged in, especially unconsciously, you feel really horizontal. Like there's this energy coming. that make sense?
I love that.
Mhm.
Always very succinct and clear in terms of the explanation. I love it.
Can I just add, part
Yeah.
of the reason that's so important is we love people. We don't have to stop loving people to have our boundaries. We don't have to stop loving people to really be effective in representing ourselves and have our heart and feel like I'm on my own side of the street. We can still keep loving everyone, but it's a different way we're traveling as we love them.
I love that. I think what I also get a lot from when you speak about this, because the only way you can know about your needs is when you actually listen to yourself rather than if you're merging with someone else and focused on their needs and you're trying to help them way over there. And I've actually found in my personal relationships, what's really helped me is voicing my needs. So it could be as simple as, oh, I've had a very long day. And I've noticed that a lot of times I expect my family or whoever I'm talking to predict or be that kind of person who's like, oh, she's had a hard day, so let's not, without me saying it, you know what I mean? And the more I've actually said it to them that I'm having a hard day or this happened or that happened, they have more space for me, they have more room for me, they'll possibly help me further with something. But it's more about me just voicing that need rather than keeping it to myself and hoping that they'll understand or figure it out themselves, or a bolt of lightning will strike their head and they'll be like, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're bringing up such important things. We could spend another half an hour just on what you brought out. We assume that people are doing what we are doing. And if we have a lot of empathy and we're reading the room, just automatically what's happening over here, what's happening over there, what do they need? We assume other people are doing it in the same way. People are very different. They may be processing the moment through their head, all different kinds of beautiful ways to be a human. But everyone kind of assumes, oh, well, this is what's happening for me, so this is what everybody else is doing. It's really sweet and most of the time not true. So learning to tell people, here's what's going on for me right now is an amazing game changer, because as you said, somehow they all of a sudden see me and maybe their compassion arises or maybe space arises, but we're more in the room together as wonderful separate people. But I think the thing that's important for us to remember about that process, because it helps us have compassion for our journey and also realize, well, why aren't other people showing up in the room and telling me how they're doing, right? We have to learn how to do this. We're really afraid of infringing or hurting people. So we have a whole cycle of learning. And part of that cycle, as we said before, I'm kind of like a broken record, starting with our inner harbor, starting with our inner sanctuary. Hello in there, what's going on for me? How am I doing? And then I may not be ready to actually say that out loud, and that's fine. But I can imagine just alone with myself, okay, if I were to tell the people right now, what would I say? It's almost like a whisper. I'm not ready yet. I can't bear to tell them. But if I were to tell them, what would I say? Even that practice is massive. It's a lot easier to be in the room, actually, even if you haven't told them. And then the more you practice that, the more you imagine, what would I say? If I could say it right now, all of a sudden one day it just comes out of your mouth. You don't even know how it happened. And everybody's okay with it. You build this muscle. Because you're coming from an I place, you're not blaming them and saying, well, you're doing this to me. You're just saying, oh, do you know what? I think I'm tired. I had a really hard day. So we learn, we develop, these muscles grow, and then we can self-represent with a kind of confidence and courage and compassion that encompasses all of us. It encompasses me and the others in the room. And people feel that. They appreciate that we're considering them too. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have one last question. I know we could
Sure.
talk about this for
I
a really long
know,
time.
I know, I
And
know.
I think we're going to have to do part two because I would really, while you were talking, I was thinking you've raised two boys, and I know they are very sensitive and expressive and lovely. And I would really love because we have so many parents on our Women in the Summit group. I know they'd love to know how to nurture and encourage vulnerability, especially in the boys, because the level of violence right now that's in India and around the world with women. I imagine that there are a lot of sensitive, sweet, emotional boys out there who don't know
Mhm,
what to do with their own vulnerability, and I'm
mhm,
sure there are lots of parents on our group who would love to know,
mhm,
nurture and honor that. So I think we're
mhm,
going to ask you, but going along with what Monica was saying, I wanted to ask you, what do you do to encourage or bring in vulnerability when you're working with clients? Like in my work as a product alchemist or with the Women of India Summit, people are coming to me
mhm,
for that work, right? They're coming to be vulnerable. They're coming to share
mhm,
problems or things that they have challenges which I then help them transform through the summit or through my private practice. But
mhm,
when you're working like with Mudita or other people who are listening, when you're
mhm,
in a corporation, for example, you're working with clients, you're working with co-creators, with collaborators. Is there
mhm,
room for vulnerability in organizations when you're working as the face of the company or within the team? Is there
mhm,
room for vulnerability when you're working with clients? Teamwork, I understand. In self development or in healing work, similar in what we do in consultancy, it's different. But
mhm,
what about when you're dealing with clients on a day to day basis? Is there room for vulnerability there?
mhm, mhm. Wow, a lot of stuff in that question too. Um, okay, so I want to answer in a general way and then get more specific. Um, I think that every single person on the planet ultimately wants to soften and melt, even if they don't know it. It's part of what we're doing here. And we're trying to find ways we can do that that feel safe. And sometimes it's just private, but it doesn't feel good to be contracted. It doesn't feel good to have secrets. It doesn't feel good to hold on to trauma, and people suffer. So, however, that's going to happen in a person's life, whether you're the parent or you're the child or you're the client or you're the coach or you're the coworker or you're the boardroom executive, you're a human. You've been given this gift of life. We're never really going to understand that. Such a phenomenal gift. We don't even really know how we got in these bodies. We can have big conversations about that, but we know we're here today. We've been given this amazing opportunity. So, what we do with that, each person's going to find their own pace and their own time and their own way, but ultimately, it's what everybody wants. Right. So, if we know that going in, if I know that as a parent, if I know that as a coach, if I know that as the CEO, if I have that in my awareness in a way that feels comfortable for me, it doesn't have to be new agey or spiritual, it can be very practical. But I just know this is a human journey. We've been given a life. This is such a gift. Then we get to learn about the different kinds of humans. You know, in a family, you have the same mom and dad, but these children have absolutely different experiences because of how they're wired and what they need to feel safe and present and heard and held and nurtured and guided. So we get to learn about what is it that I see in this other human across from me or in this group of humans? What's the need of that person in this moment? And how can I show up as a source for that, whether I'm talking or whether I'm transmitting it? We're learning how to be in the room with people that help them relax. So for one person, it might be having a talk about theory or conversation because they're very head oriented. And if we connect on that level, they start melting. For another person, they may be very heart oriented. And if I start talking a lot about concepts, I've lost them. They want to feel like we're traveling in the land of the heart together a bit. Other people might be very belly oriented. They want action. They want a plan. None of this heart nonsense or head ideas. Let's just get to the meat of the matter, right? So I think we have to see who is this person or people on the other side of me. And if I spaciously and with as much presence as is able to flow through me, show up, there will be a guidance. We will know. We're wired to know. But I think we're little scientists. We're human being scientists. This life we've been given is our own science lab. And we've got all these little science labs around us. And so we can bring our curiosity into the journey, or some days it may feel blocked and it's not a great day. But it's one day, and we can have tools to shift and reboot, and we've got another day.
I love that. Thank you so much. I would love to continue this, but we've run over already.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to promise our viewers that we'll be back with you. And I already have a long list of subjects we want to cover with you.
Great.
And we're going to have to
do
pass
that.
through to this.
Thank you so much.
Would you share your handle, how people can find you?
Sure. Probably the best way to find me is on my website, dianazaheer.com. And we have a lot of fun, new, growing programs that you can find about on the website.
Yeah, Diana has lovely healing rooms that I highly recommend you check out for various needs that you may have. Very simple, very uncomplicated, and very heart-centered. She also has a membership program that she's opening up that's free soon, so I would highly recommend you check that out. Mudita, do you want to close with something besides our intense enthusiasm to have Diana back again?
I loved everything we spoke about. I love the fact that vulnerability and boundaries go hand in hand. I liked all the stuff about finding a safe space which is between you and you. I really appreciate that, because once you can do that, then you're kind of actually aware of where you are at, and it's not dependent on anyone else. So I'm really grateful for your time with us, Diana, and thank you, Divya, for introducing us so beautifully. And I look forward to you whenever we do this next.
Thank you so much for your time and your generosity, and wish you lots of luck with your program.
Thank you so much, Diana. For our viewers, if you have questions for Diana, leave them in the comments below, and we'll ask her to get back to you as soon as we can. And I'm sure we'll have her again next time. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join us from wherever you are in the world. The replay will be on the group, but we'll also try and get it up on YouTube as soon as we can. Thank you again for joining us. Good night, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.